Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the council workshop for Monday, January 31st at 7 o'clock. My name is Mike Lynn. I'm the mayor for the District of North Vancouver, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here to receive the transportation workshop. First, just wanted to note that this meeting is being held in a hybrid fashion, so members of council, members of staff, members of the public are participating both virtually and in person. For the benefit of those here in the audience, so just note that we have Councillor Curren, Forbes, Back, and Muri participating virtually, which means with Councillor Hanson and myself here in the chamber that we have all members of council participating in the meeting. Checking out feedback, all good? Okay. At this point, council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will somebody move adoption of the agenda as presented? Moved by Councillor Back. Is there a seconder on the motion? Councillor Forbes, thank you very much. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries. Council, we have 4 sets of minutes from previous workshops that are attached to the agenda. Are there any errors or omissions from those meeting minutes? Hearing none, will someone move adoption of the meeting minutes?
So moved.
Councillor Back, second by Councillor Hanson here in the chamber. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries, and the meeting minutes from previous workshops are now adopted. At this point, we have 2 items up for discussion tonight, and we do actually have a fair number of public speakers that would like to address the issue. And I just wanted to point out that one thing that's different from a workshop versus a regular meeting of council is that we generally, within a regular meeting of council, we have the public speak first at the front end of the meeting and give their comments before council makes a decision. At a workshop, council's not making a decision at the workshop. It's what we tend to do is have council ask their questions, and then the public can come along at the tail end of the meeting and give us feedback on what they think we got, what we missed, what we still need to address. And so at a council workshop, we have the members of the public speak at the tail end of the meeting, but we do have 8 speakers that have signed up to speak to both items. I think it's 6 for the first item and 1 for the second item. So we will create a space and a time for feedback from the public on those items. At this point, I'm going to turn the matter over to staff to address item 3.1. This is the January 31st, 2022 transportation workshop on cycling. Mr. Ono, I see your hand.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, if I may, just a few introductory comments.
Please.
Thank you. Your Worship, thank you and Council for continuing our transportation workshop dialogue that we started December 6, 2021. This evening, Your Worship, we have Weisenbach here, who will start with an overview of how we're doing with the cycling priorities that Council most recently endorsed in July of 2021. She will then elaborate on the need for some focused discussion on the Lynn Valley Road Active Transportation Project. Council may recall endorsing an application for a grant for the Lynn Valley Road Active Transportation Project back in February of 2020. The BC Active Transportation Program awarded the district that grant, and staff have been working to advance the project ever since. We've considered input from the public and council as we've been going along. One of the inputs from council was to break the project into 2 phases to allow a little more time to balance the conflicting interests in the available road space we have for the most challenging section, particularly northeast of Peters between Cllr and Dempsey. The grant is actually due to expire in March, so staff actually has to come to council and seek some direction as basis for our discussions with the province regarding the project timelines. Following that conversation, Your Worship, we also have Steve Carney here, and he'll report out on council resolutions from July of 2019 regarding the 29th Street Road Safety and Mobility Improvements Project. While it's still early days, Your Worship, I am pleased to report that the initial data is showing that the road safety objectives, such as reducing motor vehicle speeds and crashes along that corridor, have been somewhat successful. So, Your Worship, with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ingrid Weisenbach, who will start the evening off. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm having some technical difficulties, so just bear with me for a minute. I am not able to share my screen. Okay, there we go. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so we'll jump right into this. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I am happy to be here this evening, sharing with you what we've worked on in 2022. We are also looking forward to hearing from you on Lynn Valley Road's 2 phases and talking about possible timelines for moving this project forward. I have about 14 slides that should take about 5 to 10 minutes to go through. Our official community plan lays out the goal that 35% of all trips in the district are to be made by walking, cycling, and transit. Delivering on the cycling network as identified in our cycling master plan will help us achieve this goal. During previous workshops, Council and staff have identified a subset of the overall network. These priority routes, highlighted here in orange, are the focus for staff to deliver these segments and thus setting the backbone of the network. They ensure that people can cycle between our town and village centers, to key parks, and to connect to destinations in the city comfortably and safely. This map provides an overview of the current state of cycling in the district. The dark green areas are ones that have cycling infrastructure in place. In some cases, this means fully separated facilities using current and best practices. And in some cases, it means the facilities were installed using older practices, such as sharrows or bike lanes without separation. Where we have existing routes shown in dark green here that are also priority routes, we will be bringing these up to standard as part of our work plan over the next 10 years or so. Staff worked hard in 2021 on a number of initiatives to improve the transportation network for walking, driving, and transit. But tonight, I'm here to highlight the work that we've done around cycling. So here's a brief overview of the work staff have accomplished or what we continue to work on. Last year, we started bringing the cycling route linking Lionsgate Village to the CNV border by way of Tatlow and West 15th up to current standard. This work was primarily focused on installing 30 km/h and wayfinding signage along West 15th and Roosevelt. We now have 2 permanent bike counters in place, one along the Spirit Trail in Welch Strip Park, shown here in photo 2, and one on Lynn Valley Road, just west of Williams Avenue. This is part of a larger data collection initiative that I'm quite excited about. To date, we have been collecting data about twice a year when possible for several cycling routes. This small data sample doesn't provide the whole picture nor the reliability that a permanent count location can. The critical Spirit Trail connection linking CNV border through Bridgman Park, Overland Creek to the town center is moving ahead. This last year, we completed the detailed design and the project was tendered. Recently, construction on the site started. We will also be installing a permanent pedestrian and bike counter as part of this project too, but this one will also include a screen that people will be able to see the results, similar to what Vancouver has near the Broad Bridge. This year also saw the e-bike share pilot program go live. It is the first of its kind in British Columbia, one that the North Shore municipalities can be proud of. In 2021, there have been over 16,500 trips made with Lime bikes. We are working with Lime to have adaptive devices available this year, which will allow even more residents access to the pilot program. Mr. Carney already provided an overview of the Lower Lynn interchanges in our previous workshop, and I will only add that I hear from people how much they enjoy the new infrastructure as they discover all of the connections that are now possible by cycling. Staff are also working on the design for the Lynn Valley Town Center to Lynn Creek Town Center connection through Kirkstone Park and along Brooksbank that will tie into the Lower Lynn interchange cycling connections. Construction is currently planned for later this year, and approximately half of the funding for this project is through Translink grants. This last year, we also worked with the ministry to advance design concepts for cycling infrastructure under Highway 1 at Capilano Road and for eastbound cycling facilities under Highway 1 at Lynn Valley Road. And we'll continue to advocate for these critical connections with the ministry. You may recall that we've discussed this portion of Lynn Valley Road once in 2019 when Council endorsed the segment's designation as a priority route. Then in early 2020, we received Council's support through a resolution to pursue a provincial grant. Later that year, we discussed phasing this project to allow for more in-depth public involvement for the northern portion. Most recently, in 2021, this route was endorsed in the OCP action plan as a quick win project. Tonight, we want to discuss next steps for each of the phases. The province awarded the district a $500,000 in grant funding. This grant is conditional on a completion date of March 2022. As Mr. Ono mentioned, staff need direction from Council to help inform discussions with the province on timelines for this project. The goal of the Lynn Valley Road Active Transportation Project is to improve the walking, cycling, and transit infrastructure along this road. We know that this road is comfortable to drive, and now we are working hard to make it equally comfortable and safe to walk, roll, cycle, and take transit. This project supports our OCP and the goal to increase active transportation mode share, as well as help us meet our climate action goals. This project was also identified as a key strategy in addressing parking issues in Lynn headwaters, specifically that the district should provide comfortable and convenient alternatives to driving for people traveling to our regional and municipal parks. In this presentation, I refer to the southern section running along Lynn Valley Road from Mountain Highway to Peters Road as Phase 1, and the northern section running from Peters Road to Dempsey Road as Phase 2. For Phase 1, the project team met with residents and businesses. They hand-delivered letters to all of the properties, made themselves available to talk, in some cases even by meeting on site. The team held a virtual public meeting. They met with the cycling group hub and reached out to schools and PACs in the area, including Lynn Valley Elementary, Ross Road Elementary, Brockton, and Argyle. They also met with internal stakeholders to understand and address operational concerns. The team took into account all of the feedback received from all these stakeholders and coupled it with the technical requirements to create a design that balances vehicle parking, pedestrian facilities, cyclist separation, and operational issues. Phase 1 is now in a position to be tendered. The team is recommending we continue to move this project forward so people can start to take advantage of the amenities such as the new signal and cycling lane. Should we receive the go-ahead from Council, the team will work with the province regarding the grant and associated deadlines. We'll come back to this in a moment, but first want to run through where we are with Phase 2. Let me start off by saying that the project team has removed the one-way option in Phase 2 from further consideration due to operational issues and neighborhood concerns. Council is aware of the constraints on Phase 2, from narrow lots, well-utilized parking, grades, utility poles, and vegetation. And the project team continues to look for options to address this section. The project team is looking into the typical range of options, ones that consider using the space between the curbs and ones that consider using the space behind the curbs differently to achieve the project's objectives. We've also been looking into another alignment. Based on informal discussions with residents and the business in the area, the team is seeing if it is possible to use the district's right-of-way for a multi-use path as a possible way of getting people on bikes to Dempsey. We've surveyed the trees, and at a high level, we think that there are some real possibilities in this option that warrant a deeper look. In the report to council, there was a comment about segment B, option 5. This language refers to the option shown here on this slide. Staff have not finalized the number of options that would be forwarded to the public for engagement, and the final number is contingent on technical feasibility and the direction we receive from you. The project team has been collecting data to help inform the design and will be shared when we move into the public involvement phase during the concept stage. One such bit of data is vehicle speeds. Lynn Valley Road is posted 50 kilometers an hour. Our data show that the 85th percentile speed is approximately 63 kilometers per hour in the northbound direction and 60 kilometers per hour in the southbound direction. This is one measure engineers use, and basically it's the speed at or below which 85% of all drivers are observed to travel. Another bit of data is the parking data, which is also informing how the team is thinking about phase 2. The graphs here are one such example, helping us to understand the parking demands of the area. The one on the left is for the section from Cllr to Dempsey, while the one on the right is from Peters to Cllr. The graphs here show that the parking characteristics and needs are different for the portion south of Cllr than those to the north. Previously, we inherently knew this to be the case, but these data confirm this assumption. The portion between Cllr and Dempsey experiences the highest demand midday before dropping off overnight, and higher demand on the weekends than the weekdays. To meet the needs of the residents that live on this portion of Lynn Valley Road would mean providing or preserving approximately 15 to 20 spaces along this section. With the inclusion of the new option next to using the right-of-way behind Lynn Valley Road added into the mix, we believe that we have a range of options to share with the public. The timeline for option A shown here is a little different than what was shown in the report. We have updated option A based on the timing of this workshop. We are in a position to move forward into public engagement for phase 2, with construction happening as early as 2023. Staff are working hard to deliver council's priority cycling routes. This year, we saw several successes, in particular, key connections opening up around the Lower Lynn interchanges, installation of permanent bike counters, and a new electric bike share program, the first of its kind in BC. These improvements help the district to meet our mode share and climate action goals. Staff is hoping to receive guidance from council on how we should proceed for phases 1 and 2 of the Lynn Valley Road active transportation project. Shown here are the staff recommendations that are open for discussion. Mr. Connie and I are available to answer questions you may have. Thank you for your time.
Mayor Little, we're getting quite a bit of feedback throughout the presentation. I don't know if it's a mic, like right now, it's just happening right now.
The council chamber thing's supposed to be muted? No. That's the only one?
It's like it sounds like a.
Anybody here in the audience have a device that they're observing the meeting on? Okay. I don't have an answer for you, Councilor Muri. I'll keep muting people who are not the primary speakers. But other than that, I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm looking through the list right now. The only unmuted is the council chamber connection. So is it?
So do you have to, this has happened before and it was, sorry, Mayor Little, but I think it was you that had 2 mics on.
Double checking, I am muted.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just I've had a couple of people message me saying they're getting it too, so we're...
Microphone on your speakers.
It was. Okay, sorry, we'll keep looking into that as we go on. I hope it's at least understandable for everybody as we proceed. Just want to again clarify something. It's been the practice of this council for the last 3 years to not make formal decisions at the workshop. We consider the matters, we ask a bunch of questions, we try to make improvements, and then the matters return to a regular meeting of council for the decision. I don't know why the boilerplate from some departments keeps coming out and making recommendations that a decision be made at a workshop. That has not been our practice for the last 3 years. So just wanted to clarify that. So tonight we will be considering the projects and giving our feedback on them, but they will have to return to a regular meeting of council for formal decisions. Mr. Stewart.
Your worship, yeah, the recommendations are just there as a point of discussion for council. That's the kind of direction that we're looking for, and the extent to which council can provide some input as to whether or not those directions are acceptable would be very helpful.
Glad to use them as direction. That's completely fine. Okay, Councillor Muri, you're first up in the list. You have some comments.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Thank you, Ms. Weisenbach, for your presentation, and I certainly concur with the work around the interchange and the connections into the town center and Lower Lynn. Just really, so much easier to get around there on a bike, given the highway and the challenges that so many have riding in that area. It's a unsafe area at best, with a lot of truck traffic and high speeds, and it's nice to have an alternative. So the improvements in regards to that infrastructure has been very welcomed. I do have a question about the public process for Upper Lynn Valley, or Lynn Valley Phase 1, Phase 2. Can you describe the public process and what took place again? I know obviously with COVID, it's hard to get people in a room to look at boards, and which is what I prefer. I like to have, boards up on easels with lots of staff and the community, the residents and council, so we can listen to everybody's concern and chat and sort of get a better understanding. I have to say, the map that was laid out in regards to, Lynn Valley Road, I'm not sure where that was. It was hard to sort of see on the map or on the roadway what exactly was going to happen. So I just like to understand what the community understands, because I think they probably understand more than we do.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Weisenbach.
Yes, thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Muri. For Phase 1 of the public engagement, like I mentioned, staff did send out letters to every house along the project limits, as well as to the businesses. We also held a public meeting virtually, because it was during COVID. And so we did provide slide deck, as well as an opportunity for residents to ask questions and weigh in at that time. As if I remember correctly, that information is still available on the website. So for those
I was just going to ask maybe I'll just ask for details. So when was that meeting? How many attended?
I don't have that information at my fingertips. I'm sure if you give me a few minutes, I can look it up, or we can look it up here.
Okay.
Great. Councillor Muri, further comments?
I would like to, this is sort of our an update. We haven't had one of these updates about Lynn Valley for a while. in regards to active transportation. And I guess I was hoping for a few more pictures. You know, what we've learned from 29th, you know, the challenges of the residents on 29th, what they've sort of faced with both sides of the street, you know, the parking being removed. We certainly heard from a vocal number of residents, including the owner of End of the Line, in regards to that one way. Last year, you know, the concern of the smaller lots, the congestion up at the headwaters, and how all of this is going to work. You know, and we did hear also from residents of 29th during the snow, you know, in regards to not being able to access the lane and those challenges. So I want to learn from the past. Yeah, there's that feedback again. It's crazy. So if you can just sort of give me sort of a rundown on those comments. And, you know, there's got to be a way for us to be able to have a public meeting in person. I mean, we go to restaurants, we meet each other, we see people, like, you know, we can all wear masks, you know, we can limit the numbers. Maybe council is in a room and people come in, we can do it in the chamber and rotate people in and out. But I really think it's important to have these things in person, because you have to be able to talk to people to understand what their issues are. And I'm not sure that letters being sent out, unless everybody that got a letter showed up at that virtual public meeting, then, you know, I stand corrected. But I'd really like to sort of work through this so we don't have a repeat of 29th, because that's been painful. I want to find a balance is what I'm trying to achieve, a middle ground, come to the center line and make sure that we can accommodate everybody. We can provide safe routes for cyclists and walkers, but also accommodate residents and their family and their guests, and then people that have to drive because they don't have another option for whatever reason. So I just want to find that balance, and I hope that's what we're trying to achieve. And I want to make sure that the community really truly does understand, because I think what we learned from 29th is that they didn't. And you know, I think we sort of said one thing and then you know, we didn't have any public process in regards to the changes that ultimately the majority of council made on 29th. Okay, so if you can answer all those questions and fix everything, that would be awesome. Sorry, Ingrid, thank you. Okay,
Sure.
That's a lot, I know.
Well, through your worship, let me try to take a stab at maybe addressing some of your questions. I will say that should we get direction to move forward into the public engagement phase, we would definitely want to make sure we can engage not only the residents in the area, but those that are impacted by this decision. So I think it would be my goal as part of any public engagement that we try to engage the residents through many different methods. So perhaps by meeting on site, perhaps by, depending on where we are with COVID, if we can have an in-person meeting, we would be glad to do that through using social media, using our website, just using a variety of means to get the word out there of what it is that we're looking at accomplishing through this project. So should we move forward into that, we would definitely be looking at trying to engage as many people that use this corridor as possible. I will say when I worked on the East 29th Street project, we did have approximately 4 or 5 touch points with the public through that process before the March or the May date. So all of that information is available. We worked with residents to understand what the various elements of that project were. We provided the data for what we were making the decisions based on. And I would be looking to at least do that similar type of process, but learn from it and do it even better than what we did on 29th. So yeah, I mean, definitely learning from our past experiences.
And when would that take place? When would that public input take place?
So based on the information in your report, we could start as early as this spring and work on it over, like basically we'd have to start working on getting the information ready to go. And we think we can be ready by the spring, and that would allow us to come back to council after that with what we've heard from the public, and along with a preferred recommendation. So it is my goal that we would bring to the public a range of options, like I said in the presentation, and hear from the residents and from the businesses their feedback. What do they like? What do they not like? We would couple that with the technical information that we would also be working on, and then present that to council to say, here is all of the information and here is staff's recommendation. And then it would be to council to give us feedback on how to proceed.
So I'll just end with this, Mayor Little. I would request that council be involved in a public open house format of some sort with, storyboards or whatever to talk about this and how it's going to get laid out. What are those options? So we're able to be there and communicate with the residents and the businesses and those that use the route. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Muri. Just my own comments on the matter. So I'm not ready to advance phase 2 yet. I still have some concerns about that. I get that you haven't included a cross section there. Maybe that's a little bit premature. But what I'm really concerned about in particular is that the westbound side, sorry, the southbound lanes, the west side of the road, particularly when you get up to the sort of Cllr area, but really from the turn, you end up with a bunch of 33 to 50 foot lots. And what the net effect is, and through that corridor, is that there's very little street parking on the downhill lanes. And the street parking that a lot of those places use, because almost all of them have secondary suites, is on the opposite side of the road. And so the problem is if you do add dedicated separated lanes on the uphill, which is where you would prioritize doing it, because that's where it's hardest to ascend up to in a line, it's going to have the net effect of wiping out incredibly important parking in that area, both for residents and trail users and for the people that support the businesses. So at this point, I'm not prepared to advance phase 2. On phase 1, again, I agree with Councillor Muri. I think that this is something we have to be able to visualize so much more. We need to take a picture of the key intersections and show what it would look like, because it is a dramatic change with that cross section that you have in the report. Particularly in some areas that right now I think are fairly straightforward, with pedestrian crossings, although we have obviously Lynn Valley Road and Mountain Highway is an off-axis kind of intersection there. But it's very straightforward now, and what I'm concerned about is that some of the dedicated separated capacity in this area is going to be greatly confusing. So I'd really like to see some modeling of what it will look like in our intersections before we proceed with phase 1. A $500,000 grant, I definitely don't want to lose access to that, but at the same time, if we can't make it so that the community can visualize it, so that we can visualize it, I think it's going to be very hard for us to move forward on this. So those are just my initial comments on it. I think that, I lived on Frederick Road, so I know the area fairly well. I know the other routes that you take bikes through the neighborhood, and I would not normally come down Lynn Valley Road to go up and down through that area. There was connections through to Wellington that I would cut through. And so I understand that for commuter traffic, we want the cycling to be on the major routes, the most direct routes. But I am having a bit of a difficult time when it's predominantly recreational travel, which is largely what the phase 2 zone would be, taking away that, doing a road allocation through that space for recreational purposes. I don't know that that's necessarily the safest way to do it either, is again to bring bring more of that traffic in that corridor. But, so, at this point, I still have some questions. I think some visualizations would really help me address those issues. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you to the speakers who went ahead of me. I'm going to be speaking in favor of the earlier timelines, both with phase 1 and with phase 2. I've said before, I support investment in the cycling network in the district. And I view that all as part of a vision of completing a set of connected and safe bike paths, which I think can be a game changer in terms of transportation. I support the Lynn Valley Road project. And given that there's a $500,000 grant available as early as March of 2022, assuming we can get on with the project, I support the recommendation to proceed immediately with the tendering of phase 1 in Lynn Valley Road with a view to obtaining that grant and proceeding forward in that way. With respect to phase 2, I support the earlier of the two options with respect to the concept phase. I'm open to the so-called option 5 of Cllr to Dempsey. I've walked the area and do believe that might be an appropriate route, and it might address some of the more contentious issues around parking at that end of the route. I'm sensitive to the comments of both the prior speakers and especially Councillor Muri about the need for a very comprehensive public engagement. I hope that the engagement with respect to phase 2 is comprehensive and that it really does hear from the community and the different perspectives. And I also would like a public open house where council can interact directly with the public with respect to some of the options. Perhaps there could be models and diagrams that really make it easy for people to comprehend. So those would be my comments. As I say again, I would support the earlier of the two options, both the construction of phase 1 and the concept phase of phase 2. Thank you very much.
Next speaker I have is Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation. As we look back at some of the cycling improvements that have happened over the last couple of years, there's lots to be proud of. Certainly the areas down by the interchange, I'm glad that was highlighted as somebody that uses that corridor a lot as I commute over to Burnaby on an e-bike. I notice that every day. As far as the Lynn Valley Road project, I do agree with all of the comments of Councillor Hanson, pardon me. I would like to see us move forward with the earlier timeline as well in both phase 1 and phase 2. I think particularly with the grant that we have on the table for phase 1, we do want to take advantage of that. And I did attend, just as an observer, the virtual public information meeting that was held. And there were, lots of positive feedback and comments from those that attended. Within phase 2, and I'm really glad that we have broken up the two parts of this project into two phases, because I think there are definitely some unique challenges with phase 2. But I think staff are well aware of those challenges. Has been highlighted by yourself, your worship, with the narrow lots. There is parking, street parking that's utilized there with the secondary suites that are part of those homes. And as well, End of the Line has certainly expressed their concerns, the owners of End of the Line. I've spoken with them on a few occasions now. They really rely on the little bit of street parking that they have there for their customers who are coming and going. They had particular concerns around the one-way option. I would have liked to see more of what that would look like, but I can understand why staff have decided to remove that as one of the potential options. But that being said, I still think even moving with the earlier time frame on phase 2 is going to allow enough time to have some thorough engagement with residents within the phase 2 section and of course End of the Line, given their interest there. I'm quite interested by the option 5, using Cllr Park and connecting Cllr to Dempsey that way. I live in the area myself. I'm in Cllr Park all the time, and I could see how that is potentially a connection that's worth exploring. And like has been said, I want to make sure that we engage in any ways that we can, getting the word out that we are looking to get feedback on this project. So whether that's, signage, I think we did a really good job when we were doing our cycling survey across the district in terms of having, lots of signs out there to let people know it was happening. Maybe something similar is worth exploring for this, and yeah, some kind of an open house would be great. But I would like us to move forward on both phase 1 and phase 2 as quickly as is highlighted in the report here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Back. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just first, a couple of housekeeping. Thank you for the report. Appreciate it. But just a couple of housekeeping things that I'd like to request going forward is much like Councillor Muri said, and I believe the Mayor Little has said, that there wasn't enough documentation and pictures in here. And it would have been nice to have the slide presentation included in the package, in the agenda package. And it also would have been nice to have the drawings of Lynn Valley Road included in the package. When you do this much referencing back to things and talking about things, I think you need to include as much information as possible for everybody. And this is the document that most of the public sees. So I think it's important that we put out more rather than less information. The consultation process to me is really, really important. And I think that's one of the lessons that have been learned for 29th. There was confusion around whether the neighbors on 29th got consultation on the last design or the last possible design and package. And so I want to make sure that we really do a thorough consultation with community members on both phase 1 and phase 2. I'm not so sure that doing a survey, I've been involved with district surveys, and I'm not so sure that doing a survey is the best way to get the best results, because number one, people have to be on our site to realize there's a survey going on. And then they also have to be people who are adept at using computers or have computers to be able to respond. So I would have been interested in the future also knowing that when we put out a survey, we get the stats back on the survey, such as how many people responded and what the comments were, much the same way we do for public hearings. I think that's important because, again, I know this has been said lots of times before, but there are people who don't use computers. So I don't know that you would have got all the answers that people might have wanted to do if they received the letter, but they didn't have, couldn't communicate through a computer. So I'd like to see those things included on a report going forward. I agree with a public engagement open house. I think that would be a perfect way for council and residents to be able to discuss the issues. So I would be in favor of that as well. Also, just a question about the cycling team members. I noticed they don't have any residents for a particular, whether it was 29th or it's Lynn Valley Road. There's no residents kind of as part of that team. Is there a reason why? Anyone?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to Councillor Forbes. At this time, we would be engaging with a wider group as part of the public engagement phase. So right now, we just have the technical team working on this to figure out which options we should be bringing forward to the public engagement phase. So once, should we get the go-ahead to start consultation, then we would definitely be engaging with residents at that time.
Thank you. What I'm concerned about a little bit is I know that staff deal with the technical side of it, and as much as they can trying to figure out what all the issues might be in a neighborhood. But sometimes I wonder if we shouldn't have a consultation first. Doesn't have to be a big thing, but have a consultation with the neighborhood first, then go to the drawing board, so to speak, and come out with the options that we can offer them. Because I think that sometimes staff uses all the information they have and the technical information, and they put together options, and maybe they don't hit the mark for the neighborhood. So I'm just concerned about that we're driving it before we actually hear from the neighborhood. So that's just my concern. I just thought if we had 1 or 2 neighborhood residents on that cycling team for that neighborhood, we'd get an advance input of what some of the concerns might be. The Cllr up at phase 2, I've done quite a bit of consultation with the end of the line, and the Cllr route is obviously favored by the business because it doesn't affect the traffic flow or the parking or their business. And so the end of the line would really favors that Cllr route. And I favor it too, because it doesn't disrupt the road as much as if we try to start putting more things on the road as well. If we have a parallel route that is less busy, that makes it safer for the bicyclists and also makes it safer on the road, that we're not trying to put more traffic on the road, then I'm in favor of that. I guess, and as far as the timing, I'm not in favor of the early adoptions. And I just have a question. Is the 500,000 grant, do you have to give them a timeline for both phase 1 and phase 2, or just phase 1?
Through your worship, I believe that we have to give indication for both phases. When we applied for that grant originally in 2020, it was before we separated the 2 projects into, or the 1 project into 2 phases. So we do have to go back to the province and give them an updated timeline for both phase 1 and phase 2.
Is the 500,000 for both phases?
It is to cover a portion of both phases, yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not in favor of the early involvement because I've been involved with quite a few of the residents in phase 2, and I think there's going to be a need for a consultation period that doesn't get rushed. So I would be in favor of, I guess it's your option B, timing. And I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I have a couple themes of comments. I think the first one on the timeline, I would be in favor of the advanced timelines as much as possible. Since the official community plan was adopted by council over a decade ago now, we have been moving in the direction, and we're directed to a community that is safer for people when they walk, when they roll, or when they choose to ride a bike. And projects like this are flowing from that. We're trying to make a safer and healthier community for people when they choose to use a bicycle as an option to get around town for all types of purposes, whether it's going to school, whether it's traveling to access recreation, whether it is recreating. And so projects like this and creating a safe, connected network of facilities are very important, and they've been considered for a long time. The specific design details of each one obviously are up for design and discussion at the time, but this is the direction that we have been moving to make our community both safer and healthier for our residents and those who choose to visit. And when I think about projects like this and the network of facilities that we're building out, some of them are built out. I do think of it like a skeleton. We're building the bones of a safe network for people to get around. And one of the important things, as an analogy, right now we have a couple bones. We're starting to build our fingers. Maybe we have our arm bone. But it's really important that we actually build all the bones, because if you've got your finger bones, you've got your upper arm bone, but you have no forearm bone, no bones in your forearm, your arm is useless. Right? What do you do with your arm, right? If you're missing the connection points in between. And so whenever we're trying to connect destinations like here, the town center with Lynn headwaters to provide people access to recreation, not necessarily that they're recreating, they could live in the town center and take a Lime bike up to go for a hike. It's important to complete the bones, complete the network as quickly and as completely as possible, because until it's complete, it's not very useful. And so I think that's really important to note as we are building out this network. I try to be hopeful about our work on this, but having direction from council in 2019 and then actually having some version of it complete by 2025, given the amount of work that we need to do to make biking and walking and rolling a safe, preferred activity for many people, we need to be able to do these things faster. And so that's the few comments on that. I think also on this route, but also in general, when we are encouraging people to bike more for the health of our community, for the health of our planet, for all of the great reasons that council supports in all of our planning documents, our climate plan, our official community plan, our action plan. Directness is key. We're trying to make this a direct route. And so as when we start to talk about, meandering through neighborhoods, like you would never, if you wanted to get people from point A to point B in a car, you would never tell them, well, you're going to take the scenic route all the time. So I don't think we should be approaching connecting these networks in the same way of people might take the scenic route here through a neighborhood or through a back way. On the option, I think it was the option behind going through Cllr Park. Again, I'd be concerned about that because you're going to force people that are using that network to make left turns across oncoming traffic on Lynn Valley Road. I don't see a way around that, which greatly reduces the entire point of the project, which is to make it a safe and direct connection between the place that they want to go, maybe end of the line, maybe the headwaters, but also, and then back towards the town center. So, you're adding if you're coming up the hill, up Lynn Valley Road, you're forcing people to make a left turn across oncoming car traffic to go through the park. And then, if they're going to end of the line, they can park on that along Dempsey there or park their bikes along Dempsey. And you're doing the same thing for people coming down, making a left turn across Dempsey, oncoming traffic on Dempsey. So I'd have some safety concerns about creating kind of meandering paths there. One thing I think that's important in any staff report or consultation is to make the trade-offs clear. I think we've heard that we're considering meandering routes as a trade-off for, say, parking or other concerns. I think it's really clear to make those clear. That if staff can explain that there is no safety impact for forcing people to cross oncoming traffic on their bikes, then let's see that. But if it's not, then let's make clear that the trade-off is safety, and we're going to prioritize something else. So I think that generally, these types of projects we should be able to do much quicker. There are design standards and best practices, both locally, but in other places that do make cycling a viable option for more people to do more of the time, safely, and as a family or for people of all ages. So that's my general comments. I think quicker, more protection if necessary. I know some of the concepts I saw there. It's something I can probably talk with staff offline and sort of the technical details, but more protection and less paint and more real infrastructure to make the route as safe as possible for those using it.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Next speaker is Councillor Curren.
Thank you. There we go. So these conversations are challenging. I think for sure, I understand that change is difficult, but there is a real dissonance between what we say and then what we do. And the fact that, we're having this conversation in this context of calamity after calamity with no real sense of urgency, I think is a valid dissonance that especially young people have. So I would ask council and I would ask the community, and I agree we need to go out to the community to ask everyone, what kind of world are we creating? And what kind of world are we leaving behind? Because I see these investments that we make in health, in vibrant communities, as investments in the future. And one thing that none of us sitting here on council had to have was growing up with an unstable climate. So no matter what we do, every single young person today is growing up with an unstable climate. And there's things that we can do to every single time we have a choice to try to make it better. And to make it better means that we prioritize things that are healthier, both for the planet and for people. And it means that we come together as a community for these big, bold moves that we have to make to leave, to give the best chance that we can for a stable climate. And so I do get emotional about this because there's just such a dissonance between what we say we're going to do. Like, I feel like we're having a conversation that we could be having 20 years ago. And we've declared a climate emergency. We have an OCP, we have a mode shift target, we have a transportation plan, we have a cycling plan. We all unanimously declared a climate emergency. We have our climate emergency, or the SEEP plan. We've got equity strategies. And we need some urgency around these transformations that actually lead us to a better place for everyone. It's going to be quieter, it's going to be greener, it's going to be healthier, it's going to be better for everyone, and it's the best chance that we have is to make big moves. So I feel like when I don't feel that sense of urgency from anyone, that we're approaching this in the same way that we perhaps approached it a decade ago when this plan was first conceptualized, is concerning. And I want us to work with the community to be having the right conversations, because if we're having a conversation that we would be having 20 years ago about the same thing, I would say we're not having the right conversations. And I'm totally open to doing that. But I would ask all of council to work together on having those right conversations about the sense of urgency. This should be a climate emergency response. Every single time we have an opportunity to do it, that's what we need to do at this level. That's what we need every single person who has the choice to make policy to do. So that's what I'm asking council to do. And I would direct staff to always approach everything with that climate emergency response, which is all about centering health. That's what it is about. It is about having a healthy, habitable planet for everyone. Thank you. That is all.
Thank you, Councillor Curren. I unmuted too many mics. There we go. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Curren. I just want to respond to that a little bit. Yes, of course, we have given direction to our staff to view decisions throughout our organization, top to bottom, through an environmental lens. We have all unanimously said that we support, that we have declared a climate and ecological emergency. I don't see the direct line to this project. And that's the problem, is we still have to make a justification for spending $1.4 million on this project versus another project. And that's going to be the challenge, is if this has the kinds of volume of traffic that go through the 29th corridor, and I think it'll be higher than that, just based on the destination it goes to. But even if it's those still relatively low numbers, the $1.4 million could be better spent somewhere else to reduce greenhouse gases. It could be better spent somewhere else to convert more of our facilities over to lower carbon footprints. And so I get the sentiment. The problem is, even though that is our overarching goal, at every point along the way, we have to ask ourselves, is this the best way to address it in this area? I'm fully committed to it, and I've been very very active in the community, talking about how I support the active transportation plan and how we've committed more than 50% of our funds over the 5-year plan in transportation towards active transportation. Bus pullouts, pedestrian, bike routes as well. But the challenge is when you talk about this project versus another project, there are many other spaces in our community that I think would benefit more from this kind of infrastructure. I cannot equate optional recreational travel to commuting corridors in and around the highway and helping people get through those infrastructure spaces. I can't equate them. And so if the goal is to reduce carbon impact, I think our goal should be to focus on the areas of the greatest likelihood of transferring people's mode. And I just don't know that up at the top of Cllr is that spot. Maybe it will help create an interesting recreational space. I just don't know that it is the best use of those funds. The Lower Mountain Highway corridor could probably use more and result in a better mode shift. Down a Marine Drive, the connections to Capilano Road and Garden, those areas could probably better benefit from a mode shift. And so while we may say this and that and more and that we're not just considering this project, we have to also consider this project and also consider this project, we still have a job to be economical about it and say we have a limited amount of resources to address an unlimited amount of need, and we need to apply our resources in the most effective space possible. I just don't think the case has been made for the phase 2 area of the plan. I don't see it as actually reducing much carbon at all, especially if it's got a concrete built form all the way up. I'm wondering what the embedded footprint of that is as well. So I hear the concern, but I don't know that the case has been made yet. We also have to make sure that it is still continues to be livable for our community, and which is why I think having public information meetings, having lots of visuals that show what the final end product is going to look like. I hope the community comes out and supports it, but I don't think they have yet. And so I still think we need to have this as a public information meeting. Councillor Muri, your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little, and thank you for your comments. I do wonder, I guess from the very beginning of the OCP, certainly the commuter cyclist community always wanted those points of call that were really challenging. Main Street, Mountain Highway, Marine Drive, Lower Capilano, those areas like, trying to go from Phibbs Exchange to Northwoods, you're on that low road. At one time you were taking your life in your hands. So I do often wonder why we put so much energy into getting people to, end of the line has a really good coffee and snacks. But the headwaters, when, to get people out of their cars, we're wanting to address the needs for the commuter cyclists versus the recreational cyclists, because the recreational cyclists we use, I think, more often than not, the trails and the connection through the trails. And certainly they're using a lot of those trails that were once hiking only, or more hikers than there were cyclists. Now there's a lot of people, you can see them, different kinds of bikes. And so I do often wonder why we are spending all this time instead of looking at sort of those high traffic areas where cycling infrastructure could really be appreciated by more people. I mean, the numbers on 29th have been, really low. They weren't, I don't think it was, I think even those that were in favor of it were surprised by the numbers. And I get that, the town center is not built out yet. There's still lots more to come, but shouldn't we be sort of shifting our money and these grants to areas where there's a lot more commuter cyclists, concentrating? As long as I've been a councillor, we've been one of the healthiest communities in the country. We used to be written up about it. We've always been considered a super healthy community. And of course we all want to, I mean, the climate emergency and what's happening to the planet and, you know, just the weather in the last year, the frightening weather in the last year, of course we're all worried about that. How could we not be? As community leaders, of course we're, you know, trying to do our best as, you know, this little dot on this very large planet that we're responsible for. You know, I hope this isn't, I hope this isn't a split. I find these splits to be so counterproductive to, you know, what we're trying to do for our overall community. I think they want to find a middle ground. More people are driving electric cars, more people are driving or riding electric bikes, more people are doing more than they've ever done for the planet, trying to be responsible, walking more, all of those things. And I hope that we can make these decisions collectively. I hope we can come to a middle ground. Even if you have electric cars, you still need to park them somewhere. Our topography is challenging. Our lots have been cut differently over the decades. Some people have lots of parking, others have none. The car is, you know, whether, I mean, if they were all electric, then what would we do? We'd still have to put them somewhere, right? So, you know, I just, I find this, I don't know, and Mr. Joyce, Mr. Carney, Mr. Ono, you're on this call, like, I don't know how we prioritize these things. Like, is the safety along Mount Seymour Parkway more critical than the safety going up to the headwaters on Lynn Valley Road? Is Lynn Valley Road between Grand Boulevard and Mountain Highway, you know, even more critical to be protected? What about Mountain Highway down to the new interchange? You know, where do all those sort of larger projects fit into this? I know we always try to, and this was the frustrating part, is we always try to build these bike lanes within town centers, you know, when developments are approved. And I don't know, I'd rather, you know, front end it. I mean, you wait for these developments to happen, and sometimes they go ahead and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they sit there. So I guess we don't have enough conversations about priorities. And I just don't feel like council plays a part in the priority other than to just put up her hand based on a staff report. You know, I feel like we've really lost connection with the community and being able to talk to them, because I think most of the community feels like all of us here. You know, I think, you know, they all have the same concerns and the same issues. And so I just wish that we could come together so it doesn't always feel like it's this way or that way. I really wish for that middle ground, that trying to you know, do our best and you know, be creative. If you look off Marine Drive, riding your bike along 16th, you know, you meander, you know, through that corridor. Sometimes you just have to. It's just because of the geography we have. It can't always be perfect. Sometimes you got to go left and sometimes you got to go right. That's just the way life is. So
I think we've got a response from a couple of staff. If I can get them in, that'd be great. Mr. Stewart, your comments?
Yeah, Your Worship, I mean, whether or not we're going to have an in-house or an in-townhouse kind of meeting, town hall meeting, will really depend on COVID. And it's quite possible that we may not be able to do that for a number of months. So I just being really blunt about that. I appreciate that that's the preferred view, and we've been trying to do as well as we can to try to engage the community with the tools we have, but it's quite possible that won't happen. Councillor Muri has talked about a middle ground, and I think there's just a philosophical difference amongst council right now with respect to the relative priority and importance of active transportation and how it's actually delivered. And we did get direction from council. We came to council a number of years ago and said, this is going to be the priorities. This is what we're going to do. Do you endorse that, council? And you endorsed it. And so I just won't accept criticism of staff that they're not and haven't listened to the majority of council right now. And I appreciate that there's a minority view here, but I mean, we are trying to work through a very difficult situation, which, you know, all of the municipalities in the Lower Mainland are finding themselves. How do you deal with active transportation versus serving the car and versus parking? And we certainly, as a suburban municipality, have that in spades. And I mean, we're going to get into a conversation on 29th. I don't know that there is a balance that we can strike when there are very, very different interests. And unfortunately, that's some of the challenges that council faces as part of your role as politicians, is to make those very, very difficult decisions. We can try to make it as easy as we can, but the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, it's going to have to be a decision. So I just want to be really clear about this. I mean, we'll do whatever council wants us to do. There's no question about it. One of the reasons that I wanted this to come back, because I was very concerned that we were going to approve phase 1 and not phase 2. And they were going to end up with another situation where we approved half of an active transportation network. And that's what we've done, and we've been criticized for by the community for a long time now. And so I just wanted to share my perspective on that, because these are difficult conversations, and I really do appreciate the different perspectives and the different perspectives out there in the community. But you're not necessarily going to find a balance, a perfect balance, with respect to this competition for road space between bikes and scooters and cars and parking. It's going to be a tough one, and at the end of the day, it may be something that's discussed and is part of the next election, because ultimately we're going to need some clear direction. And 4-3, which is where we're at right now, is not the clearest direction that staff have, and certainly it opens us up to criticism that we are proceeding in advance or without listening to the community or council. But the fact of the matter is, there really is somewhat of a philosophical difference, and maybe we can deal with that through process. Maybe we can deal with that through consultation. Hopefully so. But I just want to be really blunt and not ignore that philosophical difference.
Sorry, I just have to say that I was certainly not criticizing staff. I just asked staff if they could answer the question in regards to why do we prioritize areas such as this, which is what Mayor Little pointed out, versus areas in higher volume, higher traffic areas. So I wasn't criticizing staff. I was just asking that question. And as far as a philosophical difference, I have a road bike and I have 2 mountain bikes. Riding a road bike is, I'm a new rider on road bikes, and I find it quite horrifying sometimes because there's gravel in the lanes. The cars are speeding by you really fast. There's trucks. It is scary. So I totally understand the need for protective bike lanes. I have no problem with that at all. I'm just asking for some level of balance to be able to accommodate people that need to park in front of their homes because they don't have any other options, or looking at protected bike lanes. And I'll bring that up when we talk about 29th. I don't think it's a philosophical difference. I think it's just that we don't have enough available time to be able to communicate directly face to face with the community. And I do think there are ways to do that. We can do it in smaller groups. COVID doesn't have to stop us. Most of our lives are returning to somewhat normal. And I think we should be communicating with people more and just listening to them. At the end of the day, council gets to make the decision. But it is our job also to listen to the taxpayers of this community, because they're the ones that put us here.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Muri. Mr. Ono?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll try to answer the question about why this portion of Lynn Valley Road. So some of the members of council will remember that when Lynn Headwaters, the access road, was failing, and we actually had to shut down the road. We were already in a time of call it crisis, I guess, as far as the parking pressures on the local streets, and that road slope instability actually forced us to close the road. And then the parking, I think there were about 79 or 80 stalls available along the pipeline access road that weren't available to us anymore in the Lynn Headwaters Park. So that caused a fair bit of spillover onto the local residential streets. And at that time, we were asked to do a bit of an analysis on, well, how do we relieve some of that pressure? And we looked at parking regulatory changes. We looked at trying to an information campaign to encourage people to take other modes to get there, like bus. We were also then looking at alternatives like bicycling and getting people to carpool. And I think we even looked at a shuttle at one point in time. So we were doing all kinds of things in order to try to relieve the pressure. And we also know that there's a rising trend for both Lynn Headwaters and to Lynn Canyon. That's also got a lot of pressure on it for visitors. And granted, it's probably 3 or 4 months of the year that it's a real peak, but during that peak, it's pretty hard as far as the livability for the local residents there. So we've tried to improve some of that condition with introduction of TDM measures such as pay parking in Lynn Canyon Park. We have also this also knits together fairly well with the e-bike share program, and we're trying to get to the point where we encourage people to choose that mode to get out to these places rather than driving their cars and parking and whatever. So there's quite a few things we're trying, and that's why this particular section of Lynn Valley Road is a priority, because it came out as one of the things that we could do to try and get people to shift mode, and that in combination with e-bikes coming on stream more and more. And I will go back and say that, yeah, we have been trying to get feedback from the residents, and we've heard a lot of feedback actually. And it would be great if we didn't have a split. I agree with Councillor Muri for sure that it's much easier when we have a unified council, because then we know exactly what we're doing. For 29th Street, one of the lessons I learned there was. I still remember this in early May 6th, I think it was, of 2019, we brought a recommendation forward, and I'll take a mea culpa on this one. I misread where the majority of council was comfortable. And so I said to our staff, let's back off a little bit on the piece. I think it was to the east of Maysfield on 29th Street, and let's leave that area alone, and let's leave that as a shared bike facility for the interim period. And we brought that to council in early May. Council told us, no, that's not good enough. And so we went back with a design amendment and came back May 27th. So we turned it around fairly quickly and came back with a revised design that offered more protection, more separation for the cyclists along that corridor. And so, like I said, I'll take a mea culpa on that when I misread where council direction would be. I gave our staff probably inadequate direction. And so May 27th, we came back with a design that was supported by the majority of council, and that's what got built out there, and that's what we have now, and it does offer better protection for the vulnerable road users. So that's how we set our priorities. We really do try to take direction from council, Your Worship. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments, Mr. Ono. I think all of us have learned a lot about that project and several other projects in the community where you start with an impression of how you want to see it work, and the traffic doesn't necessarily follow what you had in mind, and so you have to come back and revisit the matter. When the facts change, so do I. So when we get updated information about the usage in the corridor, we propose alterations that may better address the concerns of the community. So there's there's a lot of grace around here for doing your best and making mistakes and learning from them, and then responding in a way that's in the best interest of the community. Mr. Carney, your comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to offer a little bit of information on the corridor with respect to cycling volumes. And so we're still compiling data from 2021, but I do have in front of me here a report to Council, information report from September 9th, 2020. And I really just wanted to point out that kind of to build on what Mr. Ono had said, in terms of cycling volumes, the Lynn Valley Road corridor ranks, I would say, in the top 5 or 6 corridors in the district. We're looking at close to 300 cyclists a day, and this is from spring 2020. So it's up there with Capilano Road, Mount Seymour Parkway, Main Street, and West First is another high corridor there for cycling. There certainly were, a few lessons learned on 29th. I think we can all acknowledge that. Number one, the need for more consultation and meaningful consultation. But number two, to try and find that balance between, obviously the road space. And so I'm not sure if it was clear to all of council, but in the Lynn Valley Road active transportation project, as part of phase 1, we are proposing 2 distinct parking pockets. And so in total, there would be, I think, about 12 or 13 on-street parking spaces in addition, to the cycling facility. So we're hoping through that, that helps to achieve that balance. There's some other minor tweaks that we've, from lessons learned that will better facilitate solid waste collection. But just wanted to point out those 2 points for the corridor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carney. We'll just comment that we're now about 8:25 on the first item. I do have a fair number of people from the public also interested in commenting on the matter, but I will still keep going to members of council until we exhaust that list. I just wish that all members of council, if someone's already said expressed a concern, try not to repeat it. Councillor Forbes, your comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. Maybe instead of doing a dialogue, I'll just spit out the points I wanted to make. I've asked, and what I would really like is I'd like sort of a 30,000 foot level policy on bike lanes. Obviously, depending on the location of those bike lanes, there would have to be adjustments. But I mean, if we could just say that policy, generally speaking, is we have either shared bike lanes, or we have them all on one side, or we have them on both sides, or if we could get to some sort of policy, then the public would know generally what to expect, and not sort of be as soon as they hear there's going to a bike lane going in, a panic time. So I think we should have like a larger policy about the type of bike lanes we're going to put in. Also, I just like to say I'm in favor of saving the planet. I'm in favor of bike lanes. But what the issue is for me is the transition and how we do these things. I don't think we should be forcing anything down a taxpayers' neighborhood, and I do believe in consultation. I don't think my preference is parallel biking lanes to the busier corridors, because a lot of the plans that people refer to all the time forget the little phrase that's been in the OCP, it's been in the transportation plan, it's been in other plans, that these bike lanes are supposed to be for all people of all abilities. And I wouldn't take a child down 29th. I don't care what kind of protection you've got on it. So if we're supposed to be building bike lanes for all people of all abilities, then I think it's safer for the bicyclist to be on a less busy lane, but as direct from A to B on a parallel route as can be, because then they're not going to be inhaling all those gas fumes from the super busy routes. And also, I think Mayor Little mentioned before that about 20% of the population is using bicycles, maybe a little bit more now because this was last year. But about 1 to 2% are commuters. So why are we doing what 1 to 2% want? I don't understand that. We should be trying to meet the goals of the all users at all abilities. And that's in our OCP from 2011. So I don't know where it got off track. I wasn't on council. I don't know where it's, we can connect town centers by using less busy routes. We have a lot of streets in North Vancouver, and a lot of side streets are a heck of a lot less busier. The other point I was going to make is resources, and I mean both staff resources and I mean financial. 29th was 1.5 million plus, and that was for one section. And the next section to Lonsdale is the city of North Vancouver that was on board to do that. Well, I just recently found out that the city of North Vancouver is in a bit of a budget priority rearranging, and therefore they pulled doing their part of 29th Hill for a while. It's not going to be in a timely basis where we're going to see the other side of 29th done. And that's regrettable because we've done one part. I'd really like to see the second part, to be completed as soon as possible. We've already finished our part 2 years ago. So, and money-wise, 1.5 for half of 29th. What do you think it would cost to do phase 1, phase 2 of Lynn Valley Road? Just say we double it. If it costs $3 million, I'm saying the same thing that has been said before me. I think the mayor said it. Is $3 million and staff time more well spent on? Right now, I'm talking to people who are cyclists in upper Lynn Valley, and they're saying they don't need this. This is a fix for a problem they don't have, and they don't want it. So I think there's a certain squeaky wheel that's really pushing this to do this. And I'm thinking $3 million, I'd rather put that towards homelessness, shelters, maybe affordable housing. That's where I'd rather put it. I'm more concerned about putting a roof over people's homes than getting the fastest route to on a bike lane. I'm not saying I don't agree we should have bike lanes, but we can do it a different way. And it would cost us less money. And the other thing, which nobody says, but I'll say it, is that the cyclists don't pay for the roads. So, you're pushing all the car, or you want to push more cars off the road. But then who's going to pay for the roads? That's the taxpayer that's paying for those roads, not the cyclists. They don't have insurance. They don't have a license. Not all of them are homeowners or taxpayers in that way. And they're paying for other things in the district, not the roads. So a couple of other points was just, I think there is a way to make a compromise. And I've tried talking to some of the very strong-minded cyclists that want the direct route. And the words I get back are, we deserve this. I don't think that's a compromise. And I wish that people would come to the table willing to listen to a compromise. And just on the weekend, I had a social media comment back to me that I pull my child behind me in a bike trailer, and they're not safe on those roads. So we need bike lanes. Well, this may sound cheeky, but my thought back was, well, if it's not safe, you shouldn't be on a major arterial road with a child in a trailer. So I think there's some compromise room, and there's some common sense that I would hope that we could get together on. And I'm also concerned because these bike lanes are going to have more and more traffic. It's not just going to be bikes. E-scooters have now been, they've been approved in the city. So it will be on our agenda at some point here. So there's more ways of moving that will want those bike lanes. And I'm worried that we're just setting up more conflict. And like I say again, if we just did the parallel as direct as possible on less busy roads, you may even get there faster, I don't know, on a bike, but at least there'd be less conflict. So, and also just as a point of information, I was reading a report today from Clean BC, and just I would really like to get staff's data that backed up the 45% GHG, I think was in the report, because I was reading Clean BC report, and it's as of December the end of December 2020. So basically the beginning of 2021. And passenger cars and trucks and motorcycles, they account for 10% of the GHG. Freights, heavy duty trucks and rail accounts for another 10%. So, and other recreational, commercial, and residential is, you can hardly read it. It's maybe 1%. So the bottom line is people who are saying it's 25% GHG or 45% GHG is not true. They're talking about the total GHG of airplanes, trucks, and this is BC. This is a BC thing I'm reading. So when they have those higher GHG readings, that's the total of everything that moves. So when we're looking at bicycle lanes, we are looking at a very low percentage. So is this the best use of our resources? And I'm not saying whether it is or not, this is a question. Is this the best use of our resources for that kind of savings versus something else we might be able to do to save GHG? That's a question. And another question is, if everything we wanted to electrify got electrified, we don't have enough power in BC to manage that. So we would either have to buy power from somewhere else, or we would have to run through brownouts. And that was said at the Mayor's Council by our mayor with Translink last week. So I just don't know that we can afford, everybody wants these bike lanes ASAP. I don't know that we have the tax base, the resources, the money, and the staff to be able to do that at the same time, maintain a level of service or increase what we need to increase in our level of service for the normal things that a district needs to do for its taxpayers. So I hope we can get to some kind of compromise. I hope there's a way to give a little on each side and come to an agreement, because I think the community will be better for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Mr. Carney, you had a response?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a real quick response, and I apologize, I don't have all the precise numbers in front of me here, but just want to point out that at a relatively high level, and I can follow up with more precise information, but at a high level, the majority of the costs associated with the project are going towards intersection improvements, a new traffic signal at Allen, 2 parking pockets, and transit-related improvements. And so those would be, platforms, waiting platforms for at the bus stops, as well as some median improvements along the road there. So a relatively small percentage, I would say, of the project, probably in the order of 20, maybe 30% at the most. And again, I'll follow up with more precise information. Of the total project cost could be attributed to cycling. So the majority is really, again, traffic signals, parking pockets, I don't think I mentioned the sidewalk. So we are proposing as part of the project, sidewalk extension. And so those components actually take up sort of, the lion's share of the project costs.
Thank you, Mr. Curren.
Oh, wait,
Sorry.
we didn't have that. The improvements on 29th, how come it was so expensive at 1.5?
Through your worship, we also put the signal in at William. We did build the in partnership with the city, the multi-use path and the custom curb, which was in retrospect expensive. We probably should have gone with a standard. We call it a C5 curb, which is basically just a standard curb and gutter. So that was a custom curb at the request of the city, and it was more than we were expecting. But again, with that project, there was quite a bit of sidewalk construction, and again, the traffic signal there were the major components of the project in terms of cost.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Curren, your comments?
Yeah, I'll be really brief. I just wanted to, obviously getting to zero carbon as fast as we can and as fast as everyone can collectively is essential. But it's not just about carbon. It is about how we want people to live in this community and everywhere else. And so I think it shouldn't be a choice. You should have the choice to not be in a car. And that's what we're trying to create, more opportunities for people who choose to get around the community in different ways, to do so safely and without dying. And so that is also happens when you are with electric cars. So the idea that we're going to, I'm a cyclist, so I can assure you that a door of an electric car feels the same as a door of an ICE vehicle. I think that this conversation is about visioning, or this job that we have is about visioning how do we get to this better place where everyone's happier and healthier. And yes, it's zero carbon, but it's so much more than that. So I think that this is one of, I look at this as a system. Councillor Bond talked about that in terms of a network, but also bigger beyond that, right? Like I think our vision is so limited to how it is now and not what it could be. And I think what it could be is so much better for everyone. So I hope that everyone can keep that in mind as we're having these conversations about, what kind of world we want to live in, because I don't want to live in a world with a lot of pollution and cars. I want people to be able to have an affordable, convenient, safe, and healthy option to get around. And I don't think that it has to just be about cars. And I think that, for many decades, that has been what things were designed around. And I think we're seeing from an environmental perspective, from a mental health perspective, from so many other ways that it's not the best we can come up with. So let's challenge ourselves to come up with new ways to do that. And Mayor Little, to your point, I would be happy to hear from staff as well, like what the other I think there's many, as you've highlighted, many priorities for cycling, but this is about also people being able to safely get to a beautiful, beautiful place that we want lots of folks to be able to get to. And so I think that providing more ways for people to do that makes a lot of sense for everyone. So I hope that we can just keep that vision of where we're trying to go in our future and think of the hard decisions that we make today, decades from now, and even by 2030, if we are to realize some of this vision, it will be these decisions that we made that get us there. So that's something that I always keep in mind.
Thank you, Councillor Curren. I just wanted to comment on that. I sit on Translink's board, and the Translink 2050 plan added for the very first time. It was unanimously passed earlier in the week, but it added for the very first time transit to recreational spaces as being a priority. And there was an entire section produced that was almost entirely referring to transportation, particularly to the North Shore Mountains, and making it so that people can use transit also as an alternative to get to those areas. So another part of the critically important system, as was said. Councillor Back, your comments?
Thank you. Just a couple brief comments as well. I want to just reiterate my support for this project and every other active transportation project that we can do in the district. I'm glad that Councillor Curren highlighted again our vision. I think we can be a community that's just safer and more enjoyable for everybody. I keep thinking about myself riding up through this corridor on my bike with my little guy, my little son on the back. Do I feel safe right now doing it? Not particularly. I certainly wouldn't, with him on the back, I certainly wouldn't want to do this without some greater protection that I think is what we're able to do here with a project like this. And I acknowledge the challenge that staff has. I want to thank staff for doing the best that they can to listen to the community and listen to council and try and find the common thread, because we are going to get pushback for all of these types of projects. It's, change of any kind is hard, and I recognize that. But I do think that if we are going to achieve any of the goals around mode shifts, particularly within our OCP, we do it through these kind of projects, and we have to stay, committed to that vision that we've all agreed upon. So when I talk about engagement, maybe it's not the same kind of engagement that others around the table are talking about. I just want to make sure that people know that this is happening. They've had opportunities to weigh in if they are directly impacted, but I do want to see this project move forward and in a timely way.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Forbes, you have a quick comment? I'm going to press you just to do a quick comment.
Really quick comment. This divide that is showing right now on council is exactly the kind of divide that I meant, where both sides could come to a compromise. I want divided or protected lanes so that the bikers are safer. I think they'd be healthier riding on parallel routes. So I'm not against it. It's the way we transition it. And the OCP and the transportation plan and other plans say it has to be for all users. And so I think this is kind of selfish to be putting inexperienced users or young children having to go on the busier routes if we could do it on a parallel route that's less busy and safer and healthier and is protected. So don't get me wrong. No matter how many times I clarify this, I always get pushback from other council members as if I don't care about health and I don't want bike lanes. That's not true. I just want them implemented in the best way possible for everybody.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Forbes. And I will just say, I'm also not a no for phase one. I think that we need to just communicate it to the residents and talk to them about it, because frankly, a lot of the stuff that we've seen here, and there's not a lot of visuals, it is still the first time. And so we may have had a discussion about it back in 2019, but that cross section of what the streets would look like, how the concrete would separate it, the community hasn't seen that yet. We haven't gone up to the community with that yet. And I think we have an obligation to. But I'm not a no. I think that we need to communicate it better. At this point, I'm going to move over to members of the public who signed up to speak. Again, the reason why we have the members of the public after council on these matters is because the report comes in a rather draft fashion at the beginning. Council has an opportunity to comment on the staff concerns. We really want the public's comments to be focused on if we've missed something, if we haven't picked up something as a council, if there's an area that we did not pick up in the conversation, that's really what we're looking for from the community. So at this point, I have John Boyle and followed by Bruce McArthur. John Boyle, are you here? Welcome. Do you want to come up to the... Right? But that's on 3.2. We haven't gone to 3.2. Yeah. Okay. So I have John Boyle followed by Bruce McArthur. John Boyle is here in person, so if you want to come up and sit in one of the chairs there, we'll get the microphone going for you. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not against bikes before I start. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak. I live in Walters Place, at 1327 Draycott Road. Back in July 2021, I emailed Shahzad on the transportation concepts, which are under further review. She was very helpful in clarifying these details at that time. I haven't seen any updates since. My objections relate to the phase one concept idea of eliminating the southwest exit from the Draycott Road cul-de-sac onto Lynn Valley Road, or alternatively not being able to enter Draycott when travelling southwest on Lynn Valley Road, northeast of Draycott. And I'll explain as follows. The concept idea would force drivers exiting Draycott from Walters Place or Brookwood North, which has got a total of 99 suites between the two of us, and then we'd have to head northeast to Institute through our school zone / daycare, west onto Frederick, south onto Mountain Highway, and the Argyle Secondary School Zone. Note that the 99 Draycott residences also involve some two-car families. Alternatively, one would have to drive a considerable distance along Lynn Valley Road to Allen Road, etc. Then there is the reverse of all of that for accessing this Draycott cul-de-sac. In addition to the Draycott residences, also impacted would be mail and courier deliveries, visitors, recycling, garbage collection, emergency vehicles, overflow parking for the Maple Garden Centre, along with users of the parking lot for the TD Bank bike shop, animal clinic, hairdresser, Waves coffee shop. I've lived at Walters Place for 4 years. There has not been one accident leaving Walters Place going onto Lynn Valley Road, not one. Overall, there's a considerable amount of traffic that would be impacted by adopting the concept ideas for Draycott. I see there's been an email distributed this morning from Steve Carney noting adjustments to maintain full access. Please provide sketches or reports for input to all Draycott residences regarding this, because I'm not familiar with it. And whatever you decide, please do not use concrete barriers and waste space. The plastic line divider posts, such as already exist on Lynn Valley Road, are much less intrusive. A further option, which I agree is down the road, would be to consider developing the laneway east of Walters Place through to Ross Road. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your comments, John Boyle. Next speaker I have is Bruce McArthur, followed by Jasper Tam. Bruce, oh, sorry, Mr. Carney, did you have a quick response from staff?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I can report back that we are aware of the concerns expressed by the residents on Draycott, and we have adjusted the design to permit full movements at that intersection with Lynn Valley Road. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carney. I'm going to have him talk to you directly. We're way over time on this item. Thank you very much. So Mr. Boyle has provided his email address. Mr. Carney, I'd like to make sure that you connect with him going forward. Next speaker I have is Bruce McArthur, followed by Jasper Tam. Is Bruce online?
I'm on. Yes, I am.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
I don't think I'll need 3 minutes after listening to John. I reside at 1385 Draycott Road, and everything John said I would echo. I am also the president of our strata, so everything that I'm saying is supported by our council. And what I just heard is that we will now be allowed to continue to turn left onto Lynn Valley Road from Draycott. Is that correct?
Mr. Carney has a response.
Through Your Worship, yes, that is correct. And that response was emailed to the Walters Place Council earlier today.
Okay, thank you very much.
That ends my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce McArthur. The next speaker I have is Jasper Tam, followed by Don Piercy. Jasper Tam, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Good evening. So I live up Lynn Valley Road and sometimes bike down Lynn Valley Road to Lynn Valley Center to go to the mall for grocery shopping. So I'm not just doing it for recreation. I'm not really commuting. I'm a relatively new cyclist, started cycling around 2 years ago, and I never feel that comfortable on Lynn Valley Road. So there are a few reasons. First of all is the parked cars. Because the road right now is so wide, the cars expect you to stay to the right instead of taking the lane. And when you're biking and you're coming up to a parked car, you need to move left and enter into the fast car traffic and also away from the door zone of the parked vehicle. And just the conflict with this going left and right creates lots of conflict zones. And I really think that this new bike lane will help address that. Second, going northbound, the area outside the garden center near Draycott Road, as a cyclist, the merge to go from that lane that's ending into the main lane is quite scary. First of all, because of the cars coming out of the garden center and cars going fast past the lights after Mountain Highway. And third is the intersection of Mountain Highway and Lynn Valley Road. Some of the improvements I like are separating the cars and bikes in this very wide road, a direct, safe connection to Lynn Valley Center along a flat road. There's not really that many parallel routes available. One route that I sometimes take is Ross Road, which you have to go up a very steep hill that would not be an option for, I think, most casual cyclists. The alternative is Frederick Road, which is connected to Mountain Highway, which is also a very busy road that's also steep. So I believe Lynn Valley Road is the flat and most direct route. I really like the intersection improvements at Mountain Highway and Lynn Valley Road that the staff have proposed, looking at their drawings. I think this will make it safer for bikes going in both directions. And I like the new traffic light at Allen Road. I find it very hard to turn left from Allen onto Lynn Valley Road because of the RBC that's there and also sometimes parked cars on Lynn Valley Road, as well as the angle of the intersection. I do have some maybe some things that staff can consider. Right now, in the drawings, it just shows painted lines on the side. Are bollards needed, like on Brooks Bank, along the painted sections? And are bollards enough versus concrete curbs or raised surfaces like they do in the city of Vancouver? And right now, I was looking at the drawings for the area outside the garden center, and it looks like there's going to be a 30-minute commercial loading zone. And on the north side, there is a shared pathway with pedestrians and bikes, but on the south side, the drawing doesn't really show how the bikes are going to work with that loading zone. It looks like that sidewalk will remain a pedestrian-only sidewalk. So I'm not sure how the staff will address that conflict zone. And overall, I think this is a great idea, and I'm glad it's being planned now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your comments, Jasper Tam. The next speaker I have is Don Piercy, and then I believe followed by Lyle Craver. Don Piercy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Welcome.
So, Don Piercy, I'm the chairperson of Hub Cycling's North Shore Committee. Your worship and members of council, Hub Cycling would like to state our support for the construction of these bike lanes on Upper Lynn Valley Road. Lynn Valley is one of the very few relatively level areas in the district, and we feel that these bike lanes will provide both residents and visitors a safer and more climate-friendly option to get to Lynn Valley Town Center for shopping, to get, as everybody's talked about, up to the Lynn Parks for recreation, but also to provide a connection to go beyond Lynn Valley for people going to work and school. And so we hope that for all those reasons, the district will move forward with this project. Skipping ahead a little bit with regards to East 29th, while we're disappointed with the plan to remove the pylons protecting the bike lanes, we understand the safety concerns, the sanitation workers, and we hope staff can find an alternate protection the sanitation trucks can get around or straddle that will still provide some form of protection more than just paint. And finally, thank you to both council and staff for your efforts to build out a safe and appealing bike network throughout the whole district. I know there's plans on foot for other areas that were mentioned, including Main Street, Marine Drive, and we're aware of those, and we think that those will help provide a complete solution that will be not just some isolated bike lanes here and there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Don Piercy. Lyle, Craver, I have you up next. Just wanted to be clear. I made a guess that you were wanting to speak to 3.1 rather than 3.2. Is it 3.1 you were wanting to speak to?
Well, I have comments to make to both, but I can be fairly brief on that. My main comment with respect to 29th Street is, I hope with respect to the Lynn Valley Road proposals that 29th Street not be used as an example of what is a good idea, because frankly, from my point of view, 29th Street is an abject failure, and I think it creates a dangerous road condition. Having to change lanes 7 times between the top of the 29th Street Hill and Lynn Valley Road is simply asking for trouble. But I suppose it's a done deal and there's nothing to be done. Okay, Lynn Valley Road. The essential problem we have with Lynn Valley Road is that it's one of 3 routes into the northern portion of Lynn Valley. Lynn Valley Road, Mountain Highway, and now Dempsey Braymore. Each of these in turn has been choked off over the last 5 years in some way. And for those of us who live in the northern portion of Lynn Valley, entrance and egress from Lynn Valley is getting tougher and tougher. Bottom line is, I have talked to a lot of people in my neighborhood, and I have found that no one in Upper Lynn Valley has had any contact with district at all on this subject. And to say that there's been adequate public consultation, I'm sorry, those of us who live north of Dempsey, we have our interests. We should be able to get in and out of our neighborhood. And as this goes further, Lynn Valley Road is going to be less and less a method of access and egress to the neighborhood. I do think that Councillor Forbes is on the right track. I do think that it needs to be remembered that whatever is proposed here is intended to be for all abilities and not simply for commuter cyclists or recreational cyclists or anybody else. One thing I do know is that the public has not been consulted in Lynn Valley, certainly not in our area, and most of those I've talked to about have simply said, I'm not as interested in this as I probably should be, because at the end of the day, the District of North Vancouver is going to go ahead and do whatever they like, and our feelings on the subject be damned. That's not what I call effective public consultation. And I really do think that trying to fast track this in any way is going to alienate more and more people. Again, what's been done on 29th Street should not be an example for what should go on Lynn Valley Road. These are important arterial roads in and out of the neighborhood. And frankly, this project is not ready for showtime. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you for your comments, Lyle Craver. The next speaker that I have on 3.1 is Duncan Wilcock, followed by Peter Teevan. Duncan Wilcock, can you hear me?
I can. Hopefully you can hear me.
I can. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Great. Thanks very much for the work on this. Excited to see this project moving forward. I'm pretty keen on seeing it moving forward as quickly as possible. I think it's important that it works on active transport. I think that's a key thing. That was the key part of the budget items. In terms of prioritizing transit, which I think it should. And transit's going to move more people. It completely eliminates the need for parking and will probably be the larger GHG reduction if it's doing a mode shift. Walking and transit should come first. The other thing I think I'll just speak to, I heard a lot of talk about recreation cyclists or commuter cyclists. I think what people mean are recreational, like people from Vancouver, I guess, riding all the way over. And riding up Lynn Valley Road, and I think that does happen. I live in Lynn Valley, and I just want to paint a picture of a utility cyclist, a bit like Jasper talking earlier. Things that I do in this neighborhood with my bike and my electric bike. I take my son to school at Lynn Canyon and the Ecology Center, and would prefer to use that road at times. We don't use it for some of the reasons Jasper talked about. It doesn't really feel safe, and so some of these bike lane improvements would help with that. We also go up to the Cllr Park. This is not, this is what some might have, it's care work. And this is things, taking the kid to the Cllr Park, to the spray park, to the playground, to the baseball, to have hot dogs. Some grandparents coming to watch ball games. So you see a lot more grandparents and older folks using e-bikes now. I think some of these are some of these the uses that these kinds of things, these kinds of lanes could be put to. Right now, I usually go Hoskins to get up to Cllr Park. It's also scary. It was mentioned of the 85th percentile of 63 kilometers an hour on Lynn Valley Road. I think that's probably the same on Hoskins. I don't know why we accept that. It's too fast. Enforcement of speed limits doesn't seem to work. We need to design the streets, to engineer the streets, to make it easy for people to drive a more safe speed. So I think that's probably about narrow roads. I hope some of that coming into this design. But I wanted to paint that picture of it's not just middle-aged men in Lycra, mammals as they call them. It's not just commuting. I'm a commuter cyclist sometimes. Sometimes I go down the Mountain Highway route. Sometimes I go up this route and go down Capilano Road to get some fresh air. As Councillor Forbes mentioned, it's nice to have fresh air, and when you have a bike, you have more of these options, and that's what helps make it healthier and more joy to travel that way. So thanks for working on this. Looking forward to seeing it moving forward soon, as soon as possible. And thanks for hearing my input and comments.
Thank you, Duncan Wilcock. The next speaker I have is Peter Teevan.
Thank you. I assume you can hear me okay?
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. The first thing I would like to bring up, I appreciated the bones analogy that Councillor Bond offered. And as most of council will know, I live here in Seymour, and I think Seymour has had some of the longest existing bicycle networks that exist in the district. Now granted, they're not separated as everybody would like them to be, but if you consider Maplewood and Lynn Creek the heart, along with the new interchange, we have the spine, we have the arms, we have the hands, and I want to go back. We've had a lot of ideology that has been demonstrated tonight, but if we go back to the original staff report, the original objective was to complete the active transportation network to Lynn Headwaters for recreational cyclists. And the reason I make the distinction recreational cyclists is because we have a lot of experience with that here in Seymour. And council, I sent you an email earlier today where I showed you how our recreational cyclists get to Seymour to ride in the Seymour trail system. Is they bring a car. They bring a car, they use the car as a base station. Most of them park for free in Parkgate Shopping Center, so they do use the bike lane a little bit from Parkgate Shopping Center up into the Seymour Park, but they're not coming from Lynn Creek using the existing bike lanes. They are driving to our network. The second thing I want to point out, I had a valuable lesson, and I was really, really pleased with the council meeting last Monday when you voted to take a look at further investments in our our community services grants. And it was pointed out, and it was a valuable lesson for me, it was pointed out that each $1 million of spending resulted in a 1% tax increase to district taxpayers. And so 200,000 of community service grants was going to meet a 0.2 increase in taxes. And this was not the time to be loading that on businesses and cash-strapped residents. Well, if you take a look at these two bike lanes together, we have $3 million, and we have a budget in 2022 that currently the draft budget is for a 2% plus 1% increase in taxes. This one bike lane project, phase 1 and phase 2, every taxpayer in the district of North Vancouver will be increasing their taxes to pay for something that the Seymour situation proves won't be used. They'll still drive the recreational bikers. They'll bring their trucks, 3 or 4 bikers. They'll set up base camp wherever they can park, and they'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Teevan. Okay, Council, I did just want to say, you know, this is obviously, both this and the next item are creating quite a bit of interest already. For the people that are in the room here, you can't see that there's actually still 60 participants on this, including the members in person as well as what's online. And so there is quite a bit of interest in this, although the chamber shot's probably not going to give you that impression. So I did just want to note that. But at this time, I'm going to recommend that we move over to the second item of the evening, which is 3.2. Mr. Ono, do you have some closing comments on 3.1 just before we move over?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to answer an earlier question, I think, by Councillor Muri about when the community information meeting was held. So that was July 28th, 2021. And there's still, actually, I just checked on our website, and the record of that meeting, as well as a video with some renderings of what Lynn Valley Road active transportation looks like, is actually still posted to the website, our own District of North Vancouver website. I can circulate that link around to all members of council if council would like that. And I do also want to offer a little point of clarification regarding Mr. Teevan's comments. This project is actually meant to be for all forms of active transportation. It's not meant to get recreational cyclists to Lynn Headwaters. It's for visitors through the area, as well as for people that want to get from Upper Lynn down to areas like Lynn Valley Centre and beyond. So the project also includes several pedestrian improvements, such as the improved crossing at Allen Road. That's a key crossing location to get to, I think it's Ross Road Elementary School, for example. So we're getting a fair bit of interest on that aspect as well. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Ono.